So again, I had spoken about early on that breathe is really an acronym, and it's an acronym for thinking about things that if we have these different components of our life in place at all times, that when we hit a rough spot, when we encounter something that's out of the ordinary, we can still persevere through what we're going through if one, we just take those deep, deep breaths, and two, we abide by some of these areas. And so we're going to talk about being brave, being responsible, empowering others, your attitude, being truthful, your health and your well-being, and then an envisioning for the future. So we're going to look at all of those things one by one. So the first one is brave. And I love Margaret Wheatley's quote here that really essentially, think about it. Think about how, like Terry Hilton just mentioned, how creative that they were able to get with their seniors during this time period. But think, if you don't have fluctuations, if there's not disturbances, if there's not a bump in the road, if there's not some things that happen that take you out of the ordinary, if you don't get out of your screen and can't get back into sharing and there's someone else that can help you, every single thing that we do, we learn from, and we get more creative with what we have to deal with, what resources do we have, and how we move forward. MRPA, we talked for years about doing online trainings, but we never, ever really took that leap of faith to go do it. And now look at us. I mean, we're training thousands of our membership and even outside of our membership on a regular basis, this whole entire year, by just being put in a situation where this is not going away and we have to deal with our circumstances. So it does push us to be so much more creative. So we do have to be brave to embrace those challenges in our life, both personally and professionally. But what I want to ask you is, what are you afraid of? Because bravery is not just the answer to fear. It's not the opposite of fear. It is allowing yourself to be vulnerable and really be open and share, not openly here right now, but I do want to ask you one thing you really feel you're afraid of. So if you could write that down, that would be great. And then I want you to really think about that fear. I want you to think, if that fear, is it legitimate? Let's say, I'm afraid of getting struck by lightning. Okay, so is that a legitimate fear? Is that something that is really something that I'm concerned about? Where does that fear come from? So where does it stem from? Is it a learned response? Is it something that you listen to? Is it something that you saw on social media? Is it something your friends have shared with you? So where does that fear actually come from? And then I want you to think about, what actions can you take to minimize that fear? So again, putting yourself in control of that fear, what can you do to help to minimize that particular fear that you're feeling? And then lastly, how can you cope with this fear in the future? Because oftentimes fear is linked to our memory, past experiences, something that we personally witnessed, the news, friends and family, and we have a reaction to our fears, but unless we really identify what they are, process those, understand what we can do to address them, process them, change them, then we are not going to be able to address them and move forward. So being brave isn't the absence of it, it's really understanding how to address and process that fear. And so being brave, and we don't always have to go around and feel that, we've got our coat of armor on and we have to be brave. I mean, again, letting down that coat of armor, being vulnerable, talking to people about what concerns us, being open and expressing that is really the first step. So, you know, we want you to be brave, but we don't want you to hide behind this false person. We want you to be authentically yourself and understand that having those fears is justifiable. It's just processing them that is important. All right, so let's move on to responsibility. And what I would like each of you to do in the chat is to actually identify another word that you would associate with responsibility. So what does responsibility really mean to you? And Tara, if you could share some of the responses, that would be great.
Yep. Being accountable, accountability, leadership, own up, care, accountability.
Good.
Yep. Ownership.
Okay, good. Good.
There we go. So Martin Luther King, we can go back there. That's great. Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do what is right. And so moral, legal, or mental accountability for your words or actions. It really comes from the Latin word responsibilis, which means to respond. So take note when you're blaming someone or something else, own what's happening around you. Note it and move on. Try not to play the blame game. I'm not going to blame it on the weak internet that I have out here in the country. I'm not going to do that. You know, but to understand what took place and what happened and how you can make it better is important. And again, that self-awareness piece is so critical right now. So if you find yourself using the blame game or frequently apologizing, try to figure out if you are really being overloaded, if you need a better way to organize and prioritize, if you need to return to the paper list and actually list everything out and have better time management, or just more importantly, learning politely how to say no. You know, we do get caught up when people ask us to do things and we really feel like, wow, this is really nice that they entrust me to do this, or they want me to do this for them, or they want me to work on this project. And if it really is too much and it's too overwhelming for you, it's better to speak up and say, you know, I would love to help you. I really don't have the capacity and the bandwidth to help you right now, but I would love to help you in the future. And if you could let me have some more time, or if you could consider possibly inviting me to do that this time next year, I think I would be in a much better space to do that. So we're not just pushing people off and saying no, and I don't want to, but really trying to prioritize what we have on our plates, if we do have the capacity to take on more, and how we're going to juggle and prioritize that in order to make sure that those that we are responsible, the things we're responsible for, that we're actually fulfilling those responsibilities and able to move forward and deal with those. So recognize your limitations, especially now, and cut yourself a little slack.